Shares of Southwest are rallying. Third quarter profit up 7. Strong demand and higher fares offset the hit from the 737 MAX. Joining us first on CNBC is Southwest Chairman and CEO Gary Kelly. Gary, it's great to have you back. Good morning.
Good morning. Great to be with you all. I got a haircut yesterday, by the way. So
you look good.
That's the first thing we care about. We talked about your last appearance on this show, where you were quite candid about your assessment of the MAX. Are you feeling any better 3 months later?
Well, yes and no. You know, we have missed our assumptions, if you will, for how things were going to pan out here in the third, fourth quarter. But we're a lot closer today to a resolution than we were then. So, you know, I'm feeling good about that. The FAA has reported that they have the final version of the software. It's in the certification process. So that's a major step forward.
Does Boeing's Q4 target for at least the early phase-in of return to service make sense to you?
It does make sense, but I think everything has to go pretty perfectly. And at this point, it's up to the FAA. And obviously, we don't want it returned to service until it's ready. You know, there's been a lot of scrutiny and a lot of hard work to get it to this point. So we're feeling good about the process from here, and not as confident about timelines. But the main thing is we need to get it right, and when it's ready, we'll get to work and we'll get it returned to service.
Gary, it's Jim. Look, I got to tell you, you always come on good and bad. This is good. I felt that despite what happened with Boeing, you kind of had incredible numbers. What's going on that the numbers turned up so much? Are we too bearish about the state of flying and travel in America right now?
Maybe, and thanks for turning to that, Jim, because I did want to brag on our people. It was a tremendous quarter. You know, the numbers are quite good. The earnings per share is up 13.9%, but for the MAX, it would have been up over 40%. So there's just a lot for investors to be enthusiastic about. And there's nothing bearish about travel right now. Our travel demand is very, very good. Strong unit revenue growth. We're looking at a prospect of unit revenue growth again, despite a not so great schedule in the fourth quarter, because we have a lot of flights in off-peak periods because of the MAX grounding. And even with that, we're looking at a very strong revenue environment. So, yeah, I was very pleased, and our people did a great job producing a wonderful operation. Customer feedback has been very high. So, except for the MAX, everything else is just doing very, very well.
Gary, what will the pilots want in terms of retraining? Boeing's talking about, say, a little more than 20 hours plus, say 23, 24 on retraining. Are your pilots more concerned that maybe they need to spend more time because they want people to feel they want the passengers to feel more confident about being in this plane?
Well, I think that's important. We're going to have to convince not just our own people, but our customers that everything is fine and everything is safe. And so we'll certainly satisfy ourselves. But it doesn't hurt to go to the extra effort just to check and recheck and check again. But no, our pilots are very comfortable with the training. We've already done refresher training on the MAX itself. And then, of course, there will be additional training required once the airplane is returned to service. So we'll have plenty of training. We'll have plenty of non-revenue flights, if you will, before the airplane is actually put back into revenue service. And we'll be very confident in the airplane before we put a passenger on there.
Gary, the bulls on the street argue that when it does come back, it's going to allow your revenue management system to really take full flight, so to speak. But there are those who are still worried about unit costs, not so much at Southwest as some other carriers, that somehow we're in for a first half of 2020 where that's going to be a worry. How do you balance those two things?
Well, you know, one of the things, back to Jim's earlier question about the numbers here in the third quarter, is our cost performance. So our costs are performing better than we had budgeted for the year. I'm very proud of our people there. We've got another really good cost outlook for the fourth quarter compared to our budget. And I hope all of that extends into next year. I think the issue for us, not speaking about the industry, the issue for us with next year is just not having certainty on how the MAX will unfold in terms of our flying. We have 34 airplanes. Boeing will owe us another 70 airplanes, or plus or minus next year, and just exactly how those are paced and returned into service is going to be a challenge. And so we'll have to staff up to be ready for the flights, and then obviously that won't be optimal if we have more resources than we have airplanes. So all of that is a little bit in play, but by the time we get to the second half of next year, I hope we're back to normal, and we should be having very good cost performances. So the main cost pressure that we have is with airport cost and all that investment. Everything else, I'm pretty pleased with the outlook over the next couple of years.
Gary, when you were here a couple of quarters ago, you talked about, I asked you about what are you going to do with Boeing? And you said, you know what, we're going to take that up privately. Well, you subsequently have had the discussions. Are you, one, let down by the way Boeing has acted post the accidents, and two, satisfied that they've given you enough of a mea culpa that you feel that you can go to your people and say, you know what, I've dealt with Boeing. They have been very forthright with me, and I think we can repair that relationship, or is it irreparable?
Well, Jim, I certainly don't think it is irreparable. I stand by my belief that Boeing is a great company with great people, has done great things for our country and our economy, and should have every opportunity to get this behind them. But, I've been very clear. We're not happy about our situation. We put our future in the hands of Boeing and the MAX, and we're grounded. And I think that pretty much sums it up. My focus right now is twofold. One is I want to settle with Boeing to recover our damages. Number two, I want to get this airplane back into service safely. And those are our two focus items. Where we go from here is a question I've also made clear that we'll address next year as to whether or not the strategy that we've deployed for 48 years is the one that we want for the next 48 years, and that is something that our board has asked me to look at, and our team will take a hard look at that. But that's something for later. Right now it is, let's get this airplane back up in the air safely.
But your board is asking to take a look at whether or not you should use Boeing as your sole supplier?
Not new news, of course, absolutely, and I brought it up. That is it's a strategic question in two senses. Are they the right partner going forward? Number one, but number two, the wisdom of having one aircraft type. You're looking at an airline that is the safest arguably the safest in the world with Boeing equipment and having a sole supplier, and every pilot in our airline is expert on the 737. So there's a lot of advantages, not just efficiency, but just safety advantages to being devoted to one aircraft type. I'm not saying we're going to change. I'm simply acknowledging that that's something that will need to be reviewed, and next year will be the time to review that.
But just to be clear, Gary, are we talking about diversifying within Boeing's fleet types or migrating to a different manufacturer? And I wonder what you think Herb would have said about all that.
Well, I know what Herb would have said because I know what he did say. And we've always evaluated other aircraft manufacturers, and especially when there's new technology that comes on the market. We've done that numerous times in my 34 years at Southwest Airlines. So next year will be appropriate for us to do that again. And yeah, I'm primarily talking about diversifying from having a sole supplier. We have no interest in having smaller airplanes, bigger airplanes. We want to stay in the narrow body market. But again, this isn't new news, and it's something that I think you all would expect, our investors would expect, and certainly our board would expect that we would consider that.
Yeah. Gary, if I could come back to something you mentioned just a few moments ago, which is the potential delivery of as many as 70 planes next year. and the potential for that to sort of, well, how you would pace it. Can you explain a bit more behind that in terms of what your expectations are or how you're going to mitigate any potential problems as a result that you seem to allude to from having that many planes suddenly hitting the system?
And if memory serves me, in other words, we end next year, assuming a back to service here shortly, we end next year with somewhere around 110 MAX aircraft. And we have 34 currently in our possession. So there are 300 or so or more grounded around the world, and this is unprecedented for Boeing, Southwest, other airlines, the FAA, other international regulatory agencies to work together to return these aircraft physically to service. And we have a plan, but we just have to expect that we may have to call some audibles with that plan. So we just don't know how many airplanes can be returned in a week. And right now we're being conservative with our assumptions, but I think that's the main thing. And then, of course, Boeing it has to build airplanes as well, and they've maintained their production capacity at, I think they cut it from 52 to 42 a month, and hopefully they'll sustain that. But in order for us to maintain our future flight schedule, they'll need to increase their production capacity back, I think, to 52 a month for us to get all of our airplanes. So a lot of questions there to work through, but right now, based on all of our conversations with Boeing, our working assumption is that if the airplane is ungrounded in December and nothing else comes to light, then we should be back where we would have been roughly the middle of next year. And I would be just fine with that right now with all the delays that we've had. So that would be fantastic.
Gary, your airline is founded upon one major principle, which is that the customer is always right. Well, in this case, you are the customer when it comes to Boeing. Are you happy with the changes, with the separation of chairman and CEO? Would you like to see a new CEO? Are you happy with Dennis Muilenburg and the communication he's given you? Or do you say to yourself, we need a clean break or else I am going to go to Airbus?
Well, again, I go back to we're not happy. If their board thinks that splitting the chairman CEO role is the right thing to do, that's fine with me. I don't know that I have an opinion on that. We work very closely, of course, with the commercial unit, which was led by Kevin McAllister. And Kevin, in my opinion, did a phenomenal job and inherited, this mess. He was only there a very short time, so we have a long relationship with him, and I have nothing but thanks for the way he's been working with us. Stan Deal is someone we know very well, and it's just indicative of the talent that Boeing has. Stan is a very fine executive, and we have a lot of confidence in his leadership. We work less at the corporate level with Dennis, and again, I think there's no question that there have been a lot of issues that have come to light over the last year. So we're not happy, and we'll be working with him privately to make sure that we address our issues.
Gary, appreciate your time as always. Stock's up 6% now. We'll see you next time.
Okay.
Gary Kelly,
well, thank
Southwest
you all for
Airlines.
having me.